Thank you so much, Carol. So yes, I've been introduced. My name is Mwanahamisi. Everyone call me Mishy. I work with WEDO as program manager, overseeing our policy work. So it's program manager, global policy. And before I started working with the international organization, primarily doing work around supporting uh, farmers cooperative, supporting education for girls, and supporting land rights in community. And it was not long when I started doing that work when I realized like everything is connected. So, for example, you cannot speak about agriculture productivity without addressing the main challenge, which is the climate change, or the land rights with the climate change in education and violence against women. So over the years, I found myself getting more to the climate change work, but I have privilege of working across different thematic areas. So I work on women's and health, I work with women in leadership, I work with women in financial inclusion. I work with women with land rights. It's like women have been the center of the analysis, and currently I'm specifically working on climate change, environmental protection, and disaster risk reduction.
Brilliant. In fact, Zonta's been looking very closely at disaster preparedness as well, for women, to make sure that our Zontians are prepared and their households are prepared and their communities are prepared and their countries are prepared. So it's a very interesting time, isn't it? Um, would you like to tell us more about what WEDO is?
Thank you. So we do is sort of like a short form, but also we like to call it we do because give you that power of like we do, but it's literally a women's environment and development organization. It was short called We Do. We Do is a global women's right advocacy organization. So we insist of us being a global, and not just because we are located in the global north, but because our perspective is global, the community we serve that is global, and also understanding the global nature of the problem that we are addressing. And our mission really is to promote a just world and to protect human rights, to advance gender equality, and to ensure that there is environmental integrity. So our work primarily, we work on all the three Rio conventions. So UNFCCC as a primary site of struggle, but also we engage actively in the Convention of Biological Diversity, CBD, but also we do engage in CCD, the Convention of Combating Desertification, and as you mentioned, we also engage in the UNDRR, especially in Sendai framework, to support the global processes when it comes to disaster risk reduction. We do understand and believe that at the center of this crisis is the economies. Economies either cause or address inequalities. So we do have specific work around the nexus of climate and economics, especially microeconomics. And we do a lot of work in that case around that, around the latest conversation on reforming global financial architectures, exploring alternative economic models, and the like. And last but not least, WIDO's work also centers around the ideas of being in the communities and advance women's equality and women's rights and gender equality. And that's we actively engage in the CSW, the Commission on Status of Women, and for our work to have sort of like a holistic view, we also engage quite actively and dedicatedly in SDGs. So we engage a lot in HLPF as well. So in that sense, I think sort of like that shapes WIDO's work and who we are as an organization.
You cover a lot. don't you? How many people do you have working at WEDO?
We do, I think now we are, I think 14.
Wow. Okay. So did you get a chance to go to COP28? And if so, what were your key impressions?
We did. Personally, I did. As I said, COP, especially UNFCCC COP, is the sort of like our battleground for we do. So my key impression, like many COP, their collective collection of governments and states. So they're not the space which naturally, for example, advance gender equality. So it's a space where you really need to fight your way through to be heard, to put your case forward. But even though that's the reality, we do strongly feel that we don't have alternative as a space. So we do engage in this space within the constraints that is a very multilateral, heavy space with a lot of men in it, but we do engage to influence. So we went to COP28 last year with a clear agenda. Last year, we prioritized three. One was the phasing out of fossil fuel, because we do know that that's the sort of like the cause of the crisis. And we understand that we had an opportunity through the global stocktake to advance a tangible outcome when it comes to phasing out fossil fuels. And the other priority for the last year was making sure that gender is in the just transition conversation and program. So last year, again, COP was expected to adopt the just transition work program, and we intentionally engage this process to make sure gender is in the just transition. And last but not least, which has been sort of like consistent call in the agenda, is financing, especially financing for gender equality, but also financing for gender just solutions.
Yeah.
So we engage to making sure that there is a clear sort of like transition from investing in harm to investing in care, and making sure that the resources that are allocated doesn't go to, continue to cause harm, but rather we shift those resources to communities that need them the most. So out of those three priorities, again, as I said, we have gains, but also we have misses. We did get a language around transitioning from fossil fuel. It's not as ideal as we would want to, but again, it's a sort of like a step in the right direction. So in so many ways, we can say that the COP28 will sort of like mark the beginning of the end of fossil fuel era. When it comes to just transition, we had a work program. A lot needs to be done, and we did push quite a lot to make sure there is a recognition of gender in the just transition, and we'll continue to keep that fight. When it comes to finance, that I think was the hardest battle. But we know like this year COP will be a finance year, so we're taking the learning from last year to continue to push in this year, so that we have a clear goal and outcome when it comes to climate finance, and making sure that the decision really center gender equality and provide direct access. There is provision for direct access of finance to women's rights organization in communities.
That's good. There's covered a lot of ground. I mean, we saw all the pictures of all the men on the first day there, all the global leaders, and we thought, spot the woman. It was quite interesting. We sort of went through a lot of the paperwork, and there just seems to be so much that happens. It must be very difficult to find the area that you need, and the people that you need to speak to. sounds an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think one of the work that we continue to do as we do religiously is the tracking the participation of women in the UNFOC process. So I don't know if you know, but we have what we call gender climate tracker, which have all the information on in the nexus between gender and climate, but also in participation in all these meetings. And soon after the COP, I think early this year, we did launch a report on how many women participated. And this report is really, the data is really aggregated per countries, per delegation, the overall participation, but also number of women who were part of the head of delegation, etc. So it's quite it's part of the work that we continue to do to support whether countries or other partner. And as you say, this COP was particularly extremely big COP. I think the second biggest COP was Glasgow, which has almost 39,000 people, and this COP has more than 100,000 people. So sort of like 3 times the biggest COP. That was huge concern for us because we really say that we don't want climate conferences to be another climate expo. And Dubai felt like we are in the climate expo. The venue was too big, too many pavilions, too many processes, too many people, which was really a disservice. So we do hope the next COP will be manageable and will stick to decision-making mandate of the UNFCCC and not all these expo and yeah, aspect of the negotiations.
Definitely. So how can Zonta members work with WEDO to advance gender equal climate action?
We so you can work with us in number of ways. WEDO now has a strategic plan. Part of our strategic plan, we have like 3 main aspects, and that is moving power, moving money, and moving minds. And within the moving power, our aspiration really is to work collectively with different actors so that we can gather a collective power to push or to address this crisis. And that is recognizing that as an organization alone, we cannot do it. We really need to be in communities and solidarity. Because of that, WEDO is supporting coordination of number of communities at global level. So we house, for example, the Women in Gender constituency within WEDO, and this is the space where the likes of Zonto and any other organization that wants to advance advocacy within the UNFCCC can be part of. We house the Women Major Group under HLPF. We house Women Gender Stakeholder Group and DRR, and we SR Coalition, for example. We house Gender Data. So we have our organization has been the hub for collective work and nurturing communities, supporting them so that we have the power that is needed for us to make an impact in the global processes. And we do a lot of work on moving money, and this is really, as I said, when it comes to climate finance, knowing that the money that are there now are either channeled or they're in the wrong hands, and that money needs to move to the right people in the right cause and the right initiative. So we do a lot of work to making sure that the resources, global resources, reach the communities that are needed, that need those resources the most. And last is moving minds, and also this is part of the work that you can support us, and we do a lot of work on an intersectional intersection of gender and climate data. So making sure that we have the data that we need, or the policymaker need. And this intersection is not just, for example, gender and environment alone, but if we get, as you said, most of your work is on the violence against women. So if we have, for example, case on violence against women and climate change and gender, so we still build that body of knowledge, and we're making the case more stronger. So we call partners to engage. We have an alliance called Gender Environmental Data Alliance, and different organizations can be part of it to share their data, to share information, but collectively move the landscape of the statistics and how that have been collected, analyzed, and used. And also publish number of knowledge and resources, and we are also happy to amplify some resources and knowledge to communities that we serve. So that can be some of the area that you can support, and happy to explore some more concrete suggestion if there will be any.
Well, that sounds very good. There's lots of scope there, isn't there? There's so many things that you're involved with. That's brilliant. And so, is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Mishy?
So, one, it has been a privilege to be invited. I wish I could have been with all of you in person, but unfortunately, it was not possible. I'm so happy to continue to be in community and in contact with all of you, and happy to provide any other support information that you might require as you journey through this space. And we extend a quite a warm welcome to the community. I would really recommend for those members who are keen and interested to join, for example, Women in Gender Advocacy Network, which is open to anyone who is interested and passionate on the intersection of gender. To do so, you can find that information online, but also happy to share with you the link so that it can be shared. But one of the other tool that sort of like comes really handy is the Gender Climate Tracker, because this is an app, like you can have it on your phone, and it's sort of like a one-stop shop for all resources when it comes to gender and climate tracker. You can find in this app specifically, for example, all the decision, UNFOC decision referencing gender across the year, across thematic discussions. You can find all the statistics about your country participation in when it comes to gender over the years since we've started tracking them, and you can see how many women, how many men, how many head of the delegation, and this can help you with your own, for example, country advocacy of your own planning. But also you can, if you have any resources that you want to share, you can share those resources, and they can be uploaded to the app, so give you an additional space to disseminate your own information. And you can find within the app as well some specific country profile and country information, so you can read what is latest about your country, but also can do comparison with other countries. So I would really recommend, if you're an advocate passionate about gender, that it can be one-stop tools to start working with. And welcome to our community, and I'm so excited to be part of this.
Oh, that's fantastic, Mishy. I think there's so many things there for us to work with. And I just want to thank you so much, because I know that you had to go and do some work over in Addis Ababa, and you've been going all over the place. I'm just so pleased that we were able to find this little time where we could actually get together and to actually make the connections. So I really appreciate you doing that today and sharing, you know, your work with us. It's so much appreciated. So thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for having me, and apologies again for missing.
No
Um,
problem. No problem.
thank
It's just
you.
lovely to catch up.